Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this is episode 339. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Stacy. That is at Stacy Penn and Stacy Penn 89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing on this Monday afternoon?
Doing pretty well. I know what it's like now to see a good quarterback completely self-destruct and throw 85 interceptions against the Jets. So we have that in common now.
We do have that in common. But before we get started, not talking about that, but talking about basketball. Before we get started, I just make a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strict Online on Instagram, posting all kinds of new content on there. Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and you've not done so already, please hit like and then subscribe to the channel. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise available on our website. You can go to our website at www.thestrict.land. You'll find a link on there to take you to the merchandise store. You can find t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. Check it out. Again, that is on our website. And then the Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, this podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, our newest podcast, hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, alongside Zach Blatter. They take your takes from our Discord channel, and they grade those takes to see how hot exactly those takes are. You also get access to the Strickland Discord, where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland, my solo pod where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. And now you get access to Strictly NFL, our newest podcast. It is about the NFL, if you could not guess that already. That is hosted by Constantine and Jeffrey Rasmussen, who you are familiar with from our Rundown show post-game. You also get access to nothing else, actually. That's it. That's all you get access to. If there are further tiers, there's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, $100 tier. It's come with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you, and none of this would be possible without BetOnline. Football is back, and BetOnline is your number one information source for all your sports wagering info with all the up-to-the-minute stats, news, scores, and matchup breakdowns. Get the latest game odds, spreads, and totals from the NFL and college football at your fingertips with BetOnline's real-time updates on statistics, news, and odds. From Week 1 all the way to the College Football Playoff and Super Bowl, BetOnline gives you access to the best football promotions and contests available anywhere online. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. So the Knicks played a preseason game against the Timberwolves since the last time we did this. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm just it was a lot more intense for sure than whatever that first Celtics game was, but I kind of just don't really care about this. And I know I would put it this way. I took more out of that for the Timberwolves than I do with the Knicks. And I think this is kind of like where I don't want to say this team is boring because it's not boring to me, but this part of the season is boring to me because it's not the season. And I already have a pretty good idea of how this team is going to play. I already have a pretty good idea of what their strengths and weaknesses will be. And therefore, a lot of this is kind of academic to me. The bench didn't play great, but on aggregate, I'm not really worried about them all of a sudden not being a good bench. Some of the stuff that we've seen from Tibbs has been a little bit weird. He hasn't played Quickly and Brunson together. Is that because he's not going to do that anymore? I don't think so. I think that's probably because he already knows how they play well. He knows how they play together. I think his focus right now is more about the specific groups. So maybe starters and bench unit, right? And the bench is a little bit more steady, has a little more continuity, I think, in some ways, weirdly, even though they kind of have the one changing piece. The starters, I think, will always be a little bit more clunky because it is your three high usage guys. So I think they always have a little bit more to kind of do to get together on the same page, where I think the bench is a little bit more kind of clearer hierarchy, even with DiVincenzo coming in for Obi. But yeah, the most important thing for me has just been don't get hurt. And then aside from that, I like some of the micro stuff I've seen from individual players. I like to see RJ driving the way he has. I like that Julius's effort defensively and kind of how willing he's been to let other guys get going offensively without hunting for his own offense has been good. Mitch has looked really nice. I think Hartenstein looks really good again. And the big thing with Hartenstein is last year we obviously saw him get up to a slow start. We found out later on that he was dealing with an Achilles issue. He looks as good as he did to end last season. He looks that good now. So that's a really nice kind of little boost for us at the start of the year. DiVincenzo's had a nice, couple cameos, I guess you can call them, his first 2 appearances. I think he's looked pretty decent. We saw Josh Hart kind of get on the floor for the first time in preseason. Just a one little stint, but I don't know. I'm not saying it's not boring to watch them play basketball, but it is boring to I don't really care to analyze these games or analyze much about them because I don't think they matter for this team. I think they matter for some teams, which is why I said I think it matters more for Minnesota. If I'm a Minnesota fan, I'd be excited that our depth looks good. The Rudy Gobert and Cat pairing looks a little bit more promising than it did. And, the depth, the depth is better than I assumed. So for teams like that, I think that have more moving pieces that had less of a, let's call it good. I mean, they didn't have as good a season as the Knicks did. I think they had a lot of shit go on last year. So they're still kind of developing things. For those type of teams, I think it matters more. I've watched Atlanta a little bit in preseason, and I'm pretty encouraged by if I was a Hawks fan, I'd be really encouraged by what I've seen because it just looks different from what was not so great about them last year, in the last couple of years, to be honest. The ball's moving around, Trey's playing off ball more, all that stuff is great. But for us, I'm just yeah, no, this looks exactly like what I thought. I hope nobody gets injured, and I'm good to go. I don't know if you have any deep observations about the Knicks preseason, but for me, I just can't really muster much oh, this is people going crazy. Oh, Evan looks good. Maybe he'll be Evan can look as good as he wants. I really have no interest in playing him. And if we're gonna be
He's
honest,
good looking dude.
is he? I don't know about that. But and quite honestly, they didn't sign Dante DiVincenzo to really consider Evan Fournier playing here. Evan Fournier exists here as an expiring contract and as somebody that will fill in if we absolutely need minutes to be filled in. But I'm happy that he's hitting some shots. Good for him, but I don't really give a fuck about what I'm seeing from him at all, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, there's not going to be a whole lot to learn. For me, there's things I would have wanted to see. The Knicks are going into the season with their primary stated plan being a 6'4" dude at the backup 4. Both you and I have said that's a development we're in favor of. With everyone healthy, we just haven't gotten to see that. I hope that the preseason minutes have added to the idea for Tibbs if he wasn't convinced that Jericho Sims at the 4 is not pretty sustainable. In terms of things I've seen that are encouraging, when RJ did play the 4 in that lineup, they were doing a good job throwing outlet passes, getting out in transition. I'm going to throw this back to you, though. DiVincenzo, I think, is supposed to be more than a cameo guy. And it does seem like that second unit has struggled a little bit to get him involved. And that's not the first time this has happened. I mean, last year, one of the most important guys come playoff time was Isaiah Hartenstein. And it took him, part of that was the injury, but it took him some time to really not just get incorporated in the offense himself, but be able to bring his unique flavor. Do you think there will be that kind of adjustment period for DiVincenzo?
No, I mean, when I said cameo, I just meant in the sense that he had just made his first 2 appearances. I don't imagine he's gonna have a
No,
cameo.
I know, but
Yeah.
he hasn't been a big part of the offense, right? Or it doesn't
Yeah,
seem like they've really what I think the ideal, if we're dreaming, it's especially how well you feel like it should work between him and Quickly, with both being able to do some things with the ball and be off the ball and push the pace and move without it and see 2 steps ahead. We haven't seen that yet, right? Do you think there's going to be an adjustment period there?
I mean, I'm sure there will be, just because that's the nature of how this stuff works. But I would not be too concerned with how long is that going to take. I think the nature of how the Knicks run their offense is there are just going to be times where the ball doesn't move that much because the basis of the entire offense is like pick and roll initiation. And then, if that guy can't create an advantage, you swing it to somebody else who ISOs or runs their own pick and roll or whatever it is. Like it's a lot of just individual creation. So like, I think that is just kind of inherent in it at times. What I would say is like DiVincenzo's never really been like a super. He's just not a guy who gets a lot of usage. That's really not like a big component of what he's been in as a player. It's just not been it's not been like part of his nature. I think for his career, I'm just looking it up now. Um, so for his career usage is at 16.6 last year with Golden State. I mean, which you would probably argue, I would certainly argue was the best year of his career. He was at 15.1. So like, can he be more involved? For sure. Like, I do think they need to just move the ball a little bit more, but I'm not too worried about that part of it. Like, I think it'll figure itself out. And yeah, I mean, like, I also think they're clearly trying to, I don't know if it's active or just like these are, now players have adapted to each other. They kind of understand what he has, but it does seem like they're making a more concerted effort to run the offense at times, not the offense, but I guess like running sets through Hartenstein, letting him initiate more. That seems to have been, I don't know, again, I don't know if it's a focus, but it's definitely something that I've noticed happening in the first two games more than it did for most of last season. So I think that's really encouraging. And honestly, I think that's something that they need to lean into. Will they stick with it? I don't know. I just think it's something to definitely it's something worth pursuing, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think you've talked about this a bit. How would you compare? I mean, do you think it could be something like how we used Joakim Noah on the Bulls? What do you kind of see the role for Hartenstein on this team in the second unit? And I mean, first of all, does Jericho Sims being any part of that equation at the four kind of destroy that? But two, like, what's your kind of vision there?
In terms of what again? I'm sorry.
The role of Hartenstein on the offense.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that he's a guy that you want at the top of the key, at the elbows, running, getting guys moving off him, having him run dribble handoffs, having him find cutters. Like, I think that's really what you want to see more of with him. The shooting, like, I know he hit a 3 in this game, but just doesn't. I mean, I'm not really convinced that's ever going to be a huge part of what you really want from him offensively, and that's fine. I don't think that detracts really much at all from him as a player. So yeah, I mean, I think the way they're using him actually right now in this preseason so far has been really encouraging. Hopefully they stick with it. And that's something that they stick with come the regular season. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy with what I've seen from him. And honestly, I think it's like the right amount of what you want from him. I don't think you want to treat him like he's Nikola Jokic, but he is a good passer, and I do think it behooves you to utilize that, especially like with that bench unit. Yes, when RJ plays the four, they have two creators, and with him and Quickly. But like, let's say you have to play Grimes in that unit, and Josh Hart's at the four. Whatever it is, like there will be situations where it is just Quickly or it is just Brunson or something, and having another guy that can at least alleviate that, even if you have Brunson and Quickly or Brunson and RJ or Quickly and RJ, whatever, it's always good to have another variation to throw in there. So I think that's pretty encouraging, and I would be, I mean, I am encouraged by what I've seen.
And you'd have to say every one of those players, with the possible exception of Brunson, are probably more dangerous getting the ball on the move or open with the ability, like Quickly and RJ in particular, right? RJ has taken massive leaps in terms of his creation and all that. Quickly is obviously a good on-ball creator, but with the exception of Brunson, I think you want the like they're almost better without the ball in their hands if they can play off a guy like Hartenstein. Kind of on that note, RJ Barrett's done a great job getting to the line. I haven't focused on his defense as much, but he's been getting to the rim. He just looks a lot more comfortable in mid range too. I think what we started to see is, he's a lot better at taking that kind of bump in the mid range and floater range and getting off a shot. And even if he doesn't get the foul call, being able to make it. What are your thoughts on RJ Barrett? Are you taking much away from that? I know you said you're not taking much away from this preseason. But he hasn't shot the ball well. He shot the ball well from the free throw line, but it seems like his process is better. Is this still kind of a wait and see thing for you, or do you think that are you taking anything away from that?
I would say I've taken away that like he looks more comfortable and decisive to me when he's driving right now, which is good. I thought last year a lot of his issue was just like he was just too methodical, slow, cautious, whatever you want to call it. He just was not decisive when he got the ball. So I like seeing what I'm seeing from him right now. I would just say this, like, I think you have to be really careful reading too much into one, like, is it obviously I'd much rather see him shoot well from the free throw line than shoot poorly from the free throw line. So that's really good. But more importantly than just, is he going to sustain this level of free throw shooting? What I'm more interested in is like, will he sustain this level of getting to the line? Because I always feel preseason can be weird in this way where like refs have these new points of emphasis and they're trying to like iron out their own shit. So you can benefit from that. And I've seen some really weird like free throw totals, individual free throw totals in preseason. I think Kuminga had like a shit ton yesterday. Like it can be all over the place. And I think it's just, I don't know if we need to assume that he's about to, get like a prime Harden whistle or something right now, but if he plays the way he's playing, I do think he will get to the line a bit more. And even if he doesn't, I think he'll benefit from it. I think his shot selection will improve as a result. And yeah, like I'm I'm happy with what I've seen from him. He's definitely not forcing shots as much, it doesn't feel like. Would I like to see him shoot better from the field? Of course. Like of course I would. That's always optimal. But like he shot well from the field in the last two preseasons and he's gotten up to slow starts. So what does that actually mean? I mean, I think even his third year, he got up to a really bad start. I remember to the point where I was like, well, is this guy ever going to hit a shot again? And then he obviously caught fire that year. But the point is like, if I'm gonna try to be to learn from my past mistakes, I don't think I'm taking too much away from like, is he shooting well or is he shooting poorly? Like that's not important to me. What's important to me is just how he is playing. And I do think how he's playing for the most part is good. He took like a couple of weird step backs and whatever, but like, yeah, like maybe this is the time of the year to try it, right? If you're going to try it, this is it. This is a good time to do it as any. So I'd rather he get it out of his system now if that's something that he needs to do. But for the most part, I would say like I've been definitely encouraged by what I've seen. I don't know that the defense has been like amazing, but it's definitely more locked in than it was for long parts of the regular season last year. And that's honestly enough. Like if him and Julius are just more locked in defensively, that should be a pretty significant improvement given how bad they were individually and kind of how that trickled down into various lineups with those guys. So I'm definitely encouraged by what I've seen from RJ for sure. So oh, Stacy is he is buffering. So we are in the buffer zone with Stacy. I'm just gonna keep going here. You know, I would say like it's kind of interesting in the sense of I've been encouraged by what I've seen from RJ in the sense of he is he is kind of taking what the defense is giving him in an aggressive way, whereas I feel like Julius is taking what the defense is giving him, but he's been a lot more willing to move off the ball and defer to others. I don't think he's really forced much at all. Like, sure, has he had a couple of possessions where you're like, what the hell are you doing? Yes. He went 1 from 4 from the free throw line against Timberwolves. He also went 0 of 3 from inside the arc. Obviously, you would like him to make more of those shots, but I think the way he's playing is actually pretty encouraging, and defensively, he's been flat out good from what I've seen so far. Now is that a thing that he's going to sustain going into the season, and that's something that he's going to sustain through the season? I don't know, but again, like the bar from him defensively, and I want to say like very specifically defensively, because offensively last year he was amazing. If he has the same season offensively he did last year, not only will I be surprised, but I'll be very, very happy about it.
You expect regression?
Yeah, a little bit. Not like, I don't think he's going to crater. I don't think he's going to pull a 21-22, but it wouldn't surprise me.
21 or whatever. 22.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if he's just not. Maybe the numbers might be there, but some of like he had like a month where he was just scorching last year. Some of that stuff I could see not playing out the same way, but I think the easiest way for him to offset any potential aggression is exactly what he's doing. It is making quicker decisions with the ball. It is just competing defensively. And if he does those things, like, the benefit will not just come to him, but it'll also benefit the team. And I think other guys individually will benefit from it in terms of their production. Stacy, you are on mute. I don't know if you're talking, but okay. Yeah. So I'm just like very kind of, yeah. That would be probably the biggest takeaway I have in terms of what I've seen that's good from Julius and just kind of like what I've liked from seeing from him. Yeah, I mean him and RJ, because I think both those guys had something very, very significant to improve upon coming into the season. In RJ's case, more than just one thing. And in fairness, in Julius' case, more than the one thing. But in terms of what they have shown, I would say that they've shown some really positive signs in terms of taking the right steps in the areas that we really needed them to coming into the season. So, okay. Looks like Stacy's internet is struggle busing here. So, I'm just gonna keep talking like a fucking idiot. I don't know. I would say that in terms of like things I haven't liked, I would. The Sims at the 4 stuff has been weird. I get it to some extent, and like I'm not totally against him just working with it, but it's not what I would have preferred to give some of these minutes to. I do think that he's limited a little bit in terms of Josh Hart's he didn't play the first game. He's clearly on some type of limit for the second game. Even in that sense, like I would have preferred to see us put RJ at the 4 and play smaller units. I also have not loved that Evan Fournier has been coming in before Deuce McBride. I know they're not exactly the same position, but like I just don't really get
Well, how
that.
much do you think that is affected at all by the fact that Fournier has been pretty vocal about wanting minutes, and you're like pacifying him to that extent, whereas Deuce isn't on that level right now, or Deuce isn't complaining, or that's not an unstable situation.
Maybe I don't know. I mean, this is like if Evan Fournier is such a big problem, then just send him fucking home. Like you don't need to.
But this is preseason, right? I mean, I don't.
Right,
do you think that this is an indication he would come in?
But if the issue is like we're like, oh, we have to give him minutes to placate him, well, it's like, look, let's just put this out there. I think everybody in the NBA is very keenly aware of what Evan Fournier does well and what he doesn't do well. I don't think anything he does in preseason is going to affect that. I would venture
but I
to
mean,
say
it's kind of maybe he feels like he got a chance, like because I think Deuce was clearly ahead of him in the pecking order last year, right? I don't know what would have happened to make that change. The only thing that happened was Deuce turning off or just destroying Donovan Mitchell for 5 minutes in a playoff game. So I wonder if it's just they're like, all right, you want a shot? Here's your shot. You only get one chance. Do not miss your chance to blow. Like,
I mean, I don't think I just don't think he needs a shot. Like we know what he is. What are we learning about
well,
this?
for
Like
his
we
own,
know
to manage that relationship, so he feels like he got a shot.
Yeah, I don't care about managing that relationship. Like I would just tell him to fucking go home. Like there's no point. What is the like? First of all, his agent isn't even some like power agent or something. Like what are we worried about if we disrespect Evan Fournier? 10 years from now, Victor Wembanyama won't come to New York or something. Like, I don't know what like relationship there is so important. I'm not saying like be an asshole to the guy, but if it's to the point where you're like, well, we have to give him minutes because he's here, even in preseason at the expense of somebody like Deuce, who quite frankly is also in a contract year, um, actually helped us win ball games last season versus didn't help us win ball games last season, and is a younger piece that you also like. Again, you have to make a decision on potentially moving forward. Like, I just think any bit of information you can get on Deuce is more valuable than any bit of information you get on Evan. Any second of Deuce on the floor is more valuable to your short and long term than any second of Evan on the floor. So that's the only thing I would say is weird. Do I now? I probably think you're. I mean, you are probably right. It is probably like them doing him a solid or them treating him professionally with some professional courtesy and whatever. And I understand that has value, but like I also think just telling him to fuck off and that would have value too. Maybe not the best way of doing business though, but I'm just I don't want to talk about Evan Fournier. Like I don't want to see anytime he hits a three and then we have to like, oh, like this guy he could have helped us in the Miami series. He could like no, he couldn't have. No, he definitely couldn't have. Like it's just and his defense is still fucking abominable. Like he can't move at all. So I don't to me, there's just it is what it is. Like I'm not gonna again, I'm not really losing my mind over this stuff, but um I will say if the regular season comes around and let's say we have an injury or let's say that Tibbs wants to go with the 10-man rotation to start the season. If the 10th man is Evan Fournier instead of Deuce, that would be very, very annoying. If we have injury issues and Evan Fournier is the guy that steps in over Deuce, that would also be annoying. If it was Jericho Sims over, like it just the Evan stuff is just so worthless to me. Like I just don't see the point in playing this guy at all. But maybe Tibbs sees something with him. Who the hell knows?
I think if Tibbs saw something with him, we wouldn't have seen the. All I'm saying is, I think that this is more. Evan's been pretty vocal. There are other players who have spoken up. Rudy Gobert, most recently. I think it's just more to give him a shot.
Rudy Gobert said something about Evan Fournier.
Oh, you didn't see this? Like Rudy Gobert said, I don't know why they're not playing him. He's really good at what he does. I don't know. He can. Let me get the full quote. He can bring things that others can't bring.
No, he can. He can. He can really nuke a defense on his own.
So this is so on Bleacher Report. It's listed as Rudy Gobert. He called the situation disrespectful. I think he can contribute. This is the quote. I think he can contribute and help a lot of teams. I think everybody knows it, but it's kind of weird when you end up on the bench and you don't really know why. Sometimes you can be stuck in a situation. I know he's going to have an opportunity again, and everyone will understand that he can help and win, and he can do it at a high level and do it every night.
Can Rudy Gobert shut the fuck up? How about that?
Are you saying Rudy Gobert doesn't know the importance of defense?
I don't think Rudy Gobert understands fucking anything that matters. He can go fucking cry about not getting a Defensive Player of the Year award like a fucking loser. He can go have no respect from anybody of worth in the NBA, like he doesn't have anymore or maybe ever had.
He also said, sorry, let me just continue the quote. He's the best shooter on the team. He's the best shooter on the Knicks in terms of pure 3-point shooting. I think he's the best.
what is pure 3-point shooting? Is there like hybrid 3-point shooting? Like I'm just kind of like, is this like a an electric car situation? Got like hybrid vehicles here. Like what is he talking about? Can he look? This guy's a fucking idiot. Um, he can't help the team win. We know this because we literally fucking witnessed it last year. He was terrible. He was awful. He couldn't move. He didn't shoot well. He doesn't shoot well unless he gets consistent minutes. And to give him consistent minutes means it has to come at somebody else's expense. Why would we do that? What is the benefit of really? Oh, he's a great shooter, so we should play him. Okay. Like, there are plenty of great shooters in the NBA that don't play a lot of minutes. There are plenty of great shooters in the NBA that don't even play. Like, this happens routinely. This is not unique to the Knicks. And I get Rudy's just doing himself, like doing his, friend and countryman and colleague a solid by gassing him up here. But he should probably shut the fuck up and worry about his own fucking bullshit ass franchise. And he can fuck off, is what I'm saying. Like, if he wants to sing fucking sonnets about Evan Fournier, good for him. But like Tibbs said, the net rating is pretty good without him. And the Knicks record without him was also pretty good. And when he got chances again, which he did get chances again, like, let's not act like he never played again. When they were shorthanded, he got on the floor quite a bit. He even had a really good moment for us, I should say, against Philly, against the 76ers in a nice Sunday. Sunday. It wasn't a matinee. It was more of an evening game. But like, who cares? Okay, if you play any NBA player enough, they're gonna have moments that you're like, wow, he really helped us win that game. That's how it works. That's why Kelly Oubre keeps fooling people into thinking he's a good player. Like, yeah, if you play Kelly Oubre heavy minutes for a full season, guess what? He's gonna have like 15, 20 games where you're like, wow, he may have helped us win that game. And then guess what? The other fucking 60 games this season, you're gonna want to like blow your brains out watching him because he's terrible. And that's what it was like watching Evan Fournier last year. Like, yeah, you can point out individual like sequences or games that you're like, well, he played well then. Yeah, he did. Guess what? NBA basketball isn't about individual sequences. It's not about one game. Shit, it's not about 1 week. It is about fucking winning minutes. Like, win your minutes. That's what it's about. It's not about anything else. It is about, do you help your team win your minutes when you're on the floor? And Evan Fournier, for all the skills he has as a shooter, a pure 3-point shooter, for all the skills he has, that he sucks at everything else. He sucks at he's also like an awful decision maker. This is the other part of it. He's a terrible decision maker. Every time that guy gets the ball on offense and doesn't immediately put up a three, I'm like, he starts dribbling. I'm like, oh God, this is going to be a fucking mess. And he's a god awful defender. Like, he cannot defend at all anymore. He couldn't move. He can't move. He can't get around the screen. Constantly dies on him. He doesn't fucking rebound. I mean, unless you're comparing him to like Cam Reddish. Like, he doesn't rebound. He doesn't do anything at an acceptable level other than shoot the 3-pointer. And like, yeah, could the Knicks use a guy that can spread the floor? Fine. But like, not if it comes at the expense of basically everything else. So if Rudy Gobert loves him so much, maybe he can talk to Tim Connolly. I am sure the Knicks would gladly give up Evan Fournier for very, very minimal draft compensation, which is good because that is all the draft compensation that the fucking pathetic Minnesota Timberwolves have.
What about Ant? Or
Fournier for Ant?
Or Jalen McDaniels?
Yeah, Fournier for Jalen McDaniels. Yeah, I'll do that. It'll be a good trade. Very, very okay with making that trade.
I mean, is Fournier even a better shooter than DiVincenzo? That's another thing, right? Especially when you take into account range and kind of.
Yeah, I mean, he probably is if you just consider like some of the like crazy movement threes that Evan can hit, and can he shoot over a contest better and all that type of stuff? Sure, but like the edge is so meaningless. If that's like, this isn't Steph Curry, it's not Klay Thompson, it's not like, I mean, it's not even Kyle Korver. He's not a Kyle Korver level shooter. He's not a JJ Redick level shooter. He's not one of these guys. So
those guys are all probably slightly better defenders than him. You would think.
I would think so. I would think that you were a slightly better defender than him, potentially. Also, like, he's not good at anything other than shooting. And I'm sorry, like it's over. Like if he needs to go play somewhere, that's fine. Like maybe he can go to Miami, and you know what will happen, right? He'll go to Miami, and Eric Spoelstra will somehow have him draining like 8 threes in game 4 against the Celtics, and Joe Mazzulla loses his mind. But like it's over for him here, and that's fine. It is what it is. Like we signed a guy, it didn't work out. Okay, it happens. And guess what? We have better players, we have better options, and we have a better like team in the sense of the pieces make a lot more sense together without Evan. And like they're more athletic, they're younger, they can get up the floor, they can defend, they can switch positions, they can do more things on both sides of the ball that make them more versatile without Evan. Like we already have Brunson, who is so good offensively that you accept that you have to account for him on defense. You have to cover for him. You have to build your structure in a way that minimizes and mitigates his weaknesses. That is acceptable because of how insane of an offensive player he is. You kind of had to do that last year with Julius because he was being lazy. And that was fine because he played at such a high level offensively, right? Like if you need to be covered for on defense to the degree that Evan would need to be covered for on defense, you better be giving me crazy offensive value. And the fact that he doesn't, and the fact that we already have at least one guy for sure in Brunson that we will always have to mitigate, it makes it even less appealing or useful to consider playing Rudy Gobert's best friend any serious minutes or role on this Knicks team.
Yeah, I think most people would agree with that. So going forward, but I mean, in your heart of hearts, you don't actually think Fournier is ahead of McBride in the rotation, right?
I don't think so, but I know Tibbs does weird things. So like, again, I'm like there are things I think during preseason, and I'm just trying not to like actually be upset about any of them because it's preseason, it doesn't matter. But if he is ahead of him in the rotation to start the year, or whatever the rotation may be, if he's ahead of him in just whatever the pecking order, be it rotation, be it you're the first kind of situational dude that steps in, yeah, that will be annoying to me. That would be very annoying to me because I think Deuce is literally just if Deuce shot if you guaranteed me right now Deuce will shoot average from 3 this year, guaranteed, no question. That player is significantly more valuable than Evan Fournier will ever be anymore in his career. Like once upon a time, Evan Fournier was a very good player. He's a very good player. But now he that time is over. It's done. And it's Deuce McBride's time now. I mean, look, I'm joking, obviously, but like Deuce, if he hits shots, the guy is just a more useful player because he has real utility on defense, right? And that is a lot more useful than whatever Evan's going to give us because Evan's a known commodity. There's no upside there. There's no, oh, well, what if? Like, no, there's no what if. We know exactly what he is and what he will be and what he will, be moving forward. The only thing that might happen is he might get slower and worse defensively, and less capable of getting off the volume that he does from 3. That's the only things that will change. Nothing else is going to change. He's not going to get better.
Yeah. Well, I think the Knicks have 2 more preseason games before the regular season starts. Is there anything you'd like to see? More experimentation, because that is something worth bringing up. Is that, and you said these are low stakes, but we know how notoriously kind of set in his ways Tibbs can be, right? He doesn't experiment a whole lot during the regular season. Is there any in particular you haven't seen yet that you'd like to see him try just for the sake of it?
I mean, I think it's been pretty weird. He hasn't mixed in Grimes with the bench much at all, which I think is weird. Again, I don't want to say, I keep saying it's weird. It's just weird for me, but I kind of understand it in terms of like how Tibbs operates. I do think he really values using preseason to play the units together as much as he can. But like, I would like to see Grimes more at the bench a little bit. Yeah, sure. I would like to see that mixed in. I am annoyed that they have not played Quickly, Deuce, Grimes together, those three together at all. I don't think in preseason.
Do you think it's ever going to happen because of the height challenges?
I mean, I would assume that it could happen. I mean, he's used it before. He used it last year. It was really, really effective the last 2 years when they've had to use it. I don't know if given full health will we see that? Probably not. But if we're talking about developing, if you want to give certain this is where the logic just doesn't make sense to me. Like, okay, if you want to say he wants to give the Jericho Sims the 4 unit a look, I don't love it, but fine. Okay, I get it. That's his prerogative. But if we're talking about giving lineups looks because we might need them, like isn't that one that you just want to like throw out there and just make sure they're still good to go together? And like, I mean, forget that. Like, I'd like to see, Quickly DiVincenzo Grimes. I'd like to see Brunson DiVincenzo Grimes. I'd like to see a lot of different combinations that we just haven't seen much of in preseason.
Yeah,
it's
and
not
for last year, the lineup Shwin is referring to Quickly, Grimes, McBride played 181 minutes last year. This is including transition and garbage time, so some noise. But it was 181 minutes, and they had a plus 18 net rating, 118 offensive, 100 defensive rating. So, and not a whole lot of 3-point luck. So yeah, this is it was a pretty effective lineup last year.
Yeah, and they were pretty good the year before too. So like, I just, again, those are just very micro level things I'd like to see, more combinations, because we do have, if you consider like Randall as the only true 4, right, and everything else is more or less guys that are flexible and can mix and match and whatever, then you're talking about like 6 guys in that rotation that you can throw out any combination of them or within reason, and it should work, right? Between Brunson, Quickly, DiVincenzo, RJ, Grimes, and Hart. If you wanted to throw Deuce into that mix, that's 7. Like, and to not really just actually experiment more with those groupings is a little bit frustrating. But look, this is Tibbs, so these are things Tibbs does. I'm trying not to really get upset about it right now because it's not worth it. If it continues into the season, then I think it's a different situation, and that's something that we can get upset about then.
Do you think it's a possibility he experiments more with that, or do you think the last 2 games will be more about giving, whether it's Jacob Toppin or Jalen Martin, some of these other guys more of a chance and resting, even a guy like Grimes or McBride who have already kind of gotten their shot?
No, I don't think he gives a shit about giving Jacob Toppin opportunities and Jalen Martin and these guys. I don't think he gives a fuck about that. He's going to use these 2 games. I would venture to guess that Brunson, Randle, and
Hart.
maybe Hart. I think those 3 guys will only play one of these 2 games. And I imagine it'll be the Boston game.
And probably Mitch, I guess, maybe, right? Or you think Mitch still plays?
I think Mitch will play. I wouldn't play him, actually. I mean, I whatever. I think you can get hurt doing anything. Like, I think it's fine if you want to play Mitch. But I think those 3 guys will only play one. And I think they'll play the Boston game because that's a better tune-up game than I think we play Washington in the last preseason game, which who cares? But yeah, that's what I think. So you might see like a lot more just random experimentation in that last one because I imagine Quickly will play. I imagine RJ will play. I imagine Grimes will play. Like I think DiVincenzo will definitely play. So I think you'll see a little bit more experimentation there. But this next game, I imagine, will be the closest we will get to an unveiling of what is our rotation. What does it look like? I think we'll get a pretty decent idea of it here.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's worth noting that, and this is a different situation. That was obviously a new team. Quickly didn't play his first preseason game. He was a healthy scratch. The second game is where we saw that, this guy's going to be a rotation guy, right? So is there no one, I mean, I guess, I know you don't follow the draft as much. Do you think there's even a remote possibility, maybe someone who hasn't gotten much time can kind of carve out a role based on what you've seen from them in very limited Do you see that for a guy like Jacob Toppin?
I mean, not this year, but like long term, I think Toppin's really interesting. He's definitely a profile that we don't have. I think he's a lot closer to me to not Tibbs was never gonna like severely cut into Randall's minutes, right? For anybody, but I think especially for a guy like Obi, who he just flat out did not think was a good defensive player or not a good enough defensive player, probably viewed him as somebody who could be physically overpowered defensively in a way that I think he's uncomfortable, that he's very much uncomfortable with. Not a good rebounder. Like I think he saw all those things, and he was just never kind of his type of. He was never going to cut into his minutes in a way that mattered at all. Obviously, Jacob Toppin, is a lot further away. He's extremely far away from ever earning a consistent role from Tibbs. But if we're just talking about the type of player he is, the skills he has, all of that, he to me is somebody I could actually imagine him being like, Randall's still my guy, but maybe he doesn't need to play 34 minutes a night. Maybe he can play 31. Just because he does have better instincts defensively, and he looks like stronger to me. Like he looks like he holds up better defensively. I think he doesn't have the high hips that Obi does, so he's less susceptible to getting pushed around. He's definitely more fluid through the hips also, so his lateral agility is better. And yeah, like I think if you're telling me like long term this guy will be an NBA player, that wouldn't shock me at all. Like I think there's some skills there that are very intriguing, and the overall package is intriguing. But is that going to happen with the Knicks? Not this year, that's for sure. And that's okay. Like that was never going to happen for him this year.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to discuss on the Knicks preseason?
Not really, man. Knicks preseason to me is just like, just get it over with. Just let these guys be healthy and let's start playing some real games.
Makes sense.
I will say I'm like very interested to see this Bucks team. I saw a little bit of them yesterday during the halftime of one of the dumbest games of football I've ever had to endure.
I assure you, there was one that was a lot dumber right before. So,
no, I don't know, man. I'm sure it was dumber for you, for sure. But that was just very, very
for
dumb
both
game
teams,
today.
I think Giants fans probably hated it as much as he did. So,
Oh yeah, I'm sure. And they probably hate the fact that they have to like care that they probably deserved a defensive pass interference call at the end of the game. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's a bad call, but kind of helps us maybe get Caleb Williams. So who's to
or
say
JJ
what's bad?
McCarthy is
Yeah.
Caleb Williams QB1 anymore? I don't know.
I thought he looked really, really. He seems like he gets a little shook in big spots. I'll say that. But like, I was watching it and like you could tell they're definitely still like getting used to playing with each other. And there were some sequences of like Dame overpassing where it's like there was one I saw where it was everybody though. So he's like they ran him pick and roll, they trapped him, so then he threw it to Giannis. Giannis drove, he threw it to Brook Lopez, who had a corner three. He didn't shoot the three, he passed it to Dame. Dame had a look from the wing, and then instead of just shooting it, he put the ball on the floor and then kicked it out to somebody else. And by that time that happened, the shot clock expired. But like even within that sequence, I was like, well, they got an open corner. They got an open driving lane for Giannis. They got an open corner three for Brook. Then they got an open wing three for Dame. And I know, like, it's preseason. I'm sure the Lakers weren't necessarily as locked in as they will be. And LeBron wasn't playing. But like when you see sequences like that, I'm just like, man, that is going to be a fucking nightmare to play against because who the hell, like, there's nobody that actually has the personnel to defend them, right? Like, it's kind of Boston has more talent overall, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I don't even, if
Well, I
you
mean, if they had Robert Williams, that would have been nice against some of those pick and rolls.
yeah, no, for sure. But it's like if you, I mean, you can't do this, right? If you concentrated all the talent on a team into like one pile, right? Would Boston's pile be higher than Milwaukee's pile? Probably not. They'd probably be around the same. But like, would you rather evenly distribute the pile of talent along more pieces that Boston has, or would you rather concentrate it more in the way that Milwaukee has? And like, basketball in the for forever, the idea has been like the team with the best talent, individual talents, usually comes out on top. But this will be an interesting test case scenario, just because Boston's top end talent is really fucking good. Also, not as good, but it is really fucking good. But also, like Dame and Giannis have never played with people as good as each other. They're also calling it freak time, which, like, come on, what are we doing? Um, but but yeah, like I just watching them for a little bit yesterday to end the second half or the first half, sorry, second quarter was like, yeah, that team is going to be really hard to defend. And even Boston, like they don't, yeah, okay, you can tell me that Drew can defend Dame. They don't really have somebody now that, other than Horford, who's, he's old. I don't know how much you could really depend on him to do it. They don't have as many guys that can slow down Giannis like they did in the past. I thought
They
Robert
have
Williams
Wenyan
always,
Gabriel, don't they?
yeah, the Giannis stopper. But yeah, like they had, Robert Williams is a guy that you could throw on him. Grant Williams is a guy that gave him trouble. Like, and now it's just Big Al. And I know Porzingis is a rim protector. Yeah, he's a rim protector, but you can't put him on Giannis. Giannis will fucking just body him. Like Randle bodies him. What is Giannis going to do to him? Like you can't just put Porzingis on him. And I like the other part too that I've found kind of interesting is there's that series from I think it was the 2018 playoffs. So that was when Dame was obviously with the Blazers and Drew was with the Pelicans still. And Drew had him in hell. I mean, that was like that might have been Dame's worst playoff series anyway, ever. And while I think that is meaningful to some degree, the Blazers did not have anybody as good as Giannis that could like take away any focus. And he had Anthony Davis behind him. It's not like he was just like it's him by himself. Like Anthony Davis behind him helps a lot. Anchoring the defense. So like, yeah, I know he'll have Porzingis here, but they have Giannis. So you're gonna have to like that. Just means you cannot key in on Dame in the same way. And like I'm sorry, like we saw Brunson give Drew buckets last year on multiple occasions. And obviously we think Brunson's amazing. But if you think Dame is a superior offensive player to Brunson, I don't really see why I should believe that like Drew is uniquely oh no, they have Drew now. Now Dame will never be able to score. And this like I don't see that. I think that's kind of like a nonsensical argument. And I just again like watching that game against the Lakers yesterday, I know it's preseason, but you can just see the way they open up the floor for each other and it's so dangerous.
Yeah, and it's like to your point on the overall talent stack. Generally, in basketball, that matters more. For example, like football, overall talent I think matters less than where you can specifically attack a team. Right, like specific matchups can tilt and skew things away from an overall talent disparity. This seems to be a situation where it's more like that, where just how you defend those two guys playing together and what they can do off of that seems very difficult. If you're Tom Thibodeau, it's very likely the Knicks may have to face these Bucks. How are you looking at defending that team? That play, let's start with, right? Just Giannis and Dame running a pick and roll.
Pray. Just pray.
That's
that
it. Heart.
Yeah, I mean,
miles and miles of heart.
I don't know. I mean, the Lakers were blitzing them a bunch yesterday, which I thought was an interesting strategy. But like, if you're blitzing, then you're giving up chances for Giannis now to attack a defense that's not just bent, but at a numerical disadvantage. Is that really what you want to do? Like, I get the idea of let's turn Giannis into a playmaker or something, but I don't know, man. I don't know if you want Giannis. I don't know if you want to gift Giannis Draymond, the coverages Draymond gets, like that's really tough. You can't go under on Dame. So that is out the window. If you go over, Dame is good enough to get into the paint and make plays through there, and now you're scrambling, or he just gets to the rim and finishes. If you switch, good luck. But which whoever they decide to attack, if Dame wants to attack him, or if Giannis decides to attack whoever's guarding Dame, just good luck. I think it's tough. I think you're gonna have to have. It can't be a thing where you're like, we just play this 2-on-2. Like, no, your entire team needs to be very, very locked in when those guys are involved in an action together. Otherwise, they're going to burn you. And, you know, it's, I don't envy being a coach that has to coach against this Milwaukee Bucks team, no matter what defensive talent you have. And, like, if you're Boston, again, like, even, okay, if you think Derek White and Drew are like, Drew, obviously, Derek White, two of the better on-ball defenders in the league. And even then, like, let's say those would, like, you're just like, hey, let's put those two guys on. We'll put one on Giannis. We'll put one on Dame. Like, I don't know. Like, it still feels like you're giving up a big size mismatch.
Can guard Giannis, right? So
Right. That's my point. Like, Tatum can't guard
like
Giannis.
if they had Anthony Davis, maybe that would matter.
Yeah, if you have Anthony Davis, then yeah, you can do a lot of things. If you have Draymond, you can do a lot of things. But like, they just don't. And look, this is not specific to Boston. Most teams, yeah, this might surprise you. Most teams do not have a guy that can defend Giannis very well. So it's tough. Like, funny enough, the Knicks, like, Randle actually did a really good job on him last year in the game they played in New York, even though he also combined that with one of his worst shooting efforts of the season. But
the thing is,
they don't.
Giannis is kind of more of a power. Like he is more of a. There isn't a whole lot of trickery to his game, right? So for a guy
Well,
like
did you
Randle,
see the move that he's been working on with Hakeem in the lab?
no, I'm not.
Good, because it was not a great move. It was like I think it was like, what is it, NBA Central or Dunk Central or whatever they call themselves now. They clipped it and it was like, oh, he's been in the lab with Hakeem, and it was the worst drop step back into a, like, it just so uncoordinated and gross, and it worked because it's like Giannis, but it was just like,
Practice, right? So
yeah, maybe you need to, maybe another summer, maybe you need to do another summer with Hakeem, but yeah, like,
but that's not a bad matchup for Randall. We haven't tried Mitch on Giannis a lot, right?
he's got into foul trouble, which makes sense given kind of like Giannis is just gonna run into you and do HB dives.
And it's
so.
also tough because Mitch still like the thing with Mitch is like he's always gonna have help responsibilities, right? So if you help and you're late coming back, Giannis is gonna get the foul on you. Like that's not even Mitch really. That's just his role on the defense.
He's also like, Giannis is a good rebounder, but I don't think he's like a particularly he's not somebody when you think of, oh, who are the great offensive rebounders in the NBA, right? He's not somebody you're like, oh, Giannis. Brook Lopez is a really good offensive rebounder if you don't put a body on him. And so if you put Mitch on Giannis, then Randle has to now box out Brook. And he's strong enough to do it, but it's more than just being strong enough. Like, you've got to be attentive, you've got to be, it's such a mundane activity that it's one of those activities that I could imagine Julius being like, I don't really want to do that today. I don't feel like boxing out Brook Lopez. It's just like you mentioned, between the kind of what you're sacrificing in terms of his help responsibility and what I think allows Brook Lopez then to start stealing extra possessions for them. I'm not sure you want to go down that path too much. Now, in spots like, if Randall's off the floor, sure, then you do that. But we've seen Giannis just be a handful for a lot of big ass centers, not just Mitch. Like, we saw he gave Hartenstein work last year too, and Hartenstein's a big dude. So like, it just is what it is. You're never going to stop Giannis. You're just going to have to try to contain him the best you can. And I do feel like Randall can be annoying about a lot of things. He would be pretty focused. I think he'd be pretty jacked up to face off on Giannis. Like if you were like, hey, this is your matchup. You've got to defend him. That's actually one dude I would not worry too much about. Like he's not going to compete defensively, or he's not going to. I think he would compete. I think he would kind of relish that matchup in a lot of ways. And so I'm very curious to see how they play this out. The guard stuff though, man, with Dame, I have no idea what the hell we're gonna do.
Well, I mean, they have some good point of attack options. They got Grimes. They have Deuce for however long they want to use him. Mitch was much better. I wonder if they would go back
They've
to
Dante.
What?
They've Dante.
Dante and Quickly are ideally off-ball guys, but those are guys who can play on ball pretty effectively. So they have some options and they have some bodies to throw there. It's also the bigs. Like I think Mitch is capable more of hedging. It's not something that Tibbs goes to a lot, but when they've tried it, I think Mitch has been capable. Sims has that in his bag. Hartenstein has shown that, although I think you'd probably like Hartenstein and Drop. Drop is probably a bit of a non-starter against Dame. It's also like they have so many good help defenders. To your point, it's not going to be a 2-on-2 thing, even if you had Bam and Drew together somehow, right? Those are that's probably your best 2-man pick and roll defense combination you could make in the league, besides Drew and Anthony Davis, whoever you want to say. Do you feel like that? Who do you think the Knicks can help off in this kind of supporting cast here?
On Drew? Or sorry, on Dame, I mean?
On that, if it's a pick and roll with Dame and Giannis, who are you helping off of? Like, how are you kind of making it?
I mean, you got to help off on whoever. So, like, not Chris or Brooke, right? I mean, ultimately, I think you'd have to chance helping off Brooke, right? Like, if the best shot they're getting is a Brooke Lopez 3 and he's a good 3-point shooter, you almost have to live with that given your other options, right? I would rather give Brooke an open 3 than Middleton. And the rest of it, I don't know. Like, it's funny that Grayson Allen isn't there anymore, which makes their team more likable, which is good. I guess if Portis is in the game, you'd help off Portis, but he's like a pretty decent 3-point shooter too. It's just tough. Like it is tough what they present, and they're going to put a lot of pressure on you. And you got to make. I mean, the thing is, let's say I don't know who's been starting for them, but let's say Beasley. Let's say Beasley was starting. He's a space cadet on defense, but he's a pretty solid 3-point shooter, and that makes it hard. Like they have dudes that can shoot the ball, and they're probably going to be playing a lot of their minutes. I think that they have Campaign now too. He might be a guy that features in lineups for them. Like it's tough. Again, I don't envy the job of Tibbs in this situation or any coach that has to face off on the team, because I think they're going to put pressure on you in ways that a lot of teams don't. And like same goes for Boston, right? Boston's going to put pressure on teams in ways that a lot of teams don't, because they have a legit 5 that can spread the floor on top of having Tatum and Brown and Holiday now. So like these two teams are they're going to stress defenses to a very, very high level. I'm very interested to see how teams defend them. I think with Boston, it's a little bit easier. You can get away with switching more against their guys than you can. I think with Milwaukee, the upshot for Boston is they should be a more solid defensive team than Milwaukee, even with kind of like the personnel Milwaukee has. Also worth noting that Milwaukee, I don't think Middleton has played yet, and they also have a rookie head coach. So they have more unknown variables. I know that Mazzulla is a second-year coach, and obviously he was kind of thrust into that position last year, but he still at least has he has the experience. Adrian Griffin does not have a head coaching experience until now. So how he adapts and how he responds to things, and that'll be very, very interesting to see.
Yeah, interesting on this play Atlanta too. Is he gonna throw the full sink at his son on the Hawks? That'll be interesting to see. Another question, kind of getting back to what we were just talking about. We should talk about Boston afterwards, but there's several players on the Knicks who said Mitch is their most important player. He got rated, I think, 50 spots below Jared Allen. I think me and you have talked about Mitchell Robinson a lot in the past. I don't know if he's their most important player. I think that he brings a very unique skill set, and he's less replaceable, especially for people who want to replace him with like Karl Towns or something. Can you just tell me your thoughts on that?
Do I think Mitch is our most valuable trade piece? I saw that. I thought that was an interesting
No,
article.
I don't know about trade piece, but just valuable player. I don't. Did it say? I think it was the other players in the Knicks saying that's the one I was talking about.
It might have gotten aggregated as trade chip or something like that. Yeah, and there were like I think Grimes said something about him being the most valuable player. I think it was very specifically Grimes. I don't think he's the most valuable player. And this is not a knock on him. We've gone 500 in the last 2 seasons without him. I believe that is over. I mean, it's over a pretty decent amount of time. I want to say 14-14 or something without him over the last 2 years.
Which is worth noting. That is coming down from how the Knicks have actually played, which is nice to say because
yes, but I mean, well, if you include the year before, it's about roughly even, right? If you combine the seasons. So no, I don't think he's the most valuable piece. We've shown an ability to at least withstand his absence for a little while. Hartenstein, obviously, I think is a starting caliber center. Sims, not so much, but he can buy you minutes. And that's worth noting. I still think like both Brunson and Randle are more valuable. I know, and I've talked to Jeff about this. Jeff would probably disagree. I'm almost positive he would disagree on Brunson, being that he doesn't think the gap between him and Quickly is that significant. I think that conversation's kind of like, I don't think it's that straightforward. If you have Quickly as your point guard, he's not going to be capable of the type of high usage scoring binges that Brunson can put up. And that certainly helps you as a basketball team, his ability to do that and do it efficiently. What Quickly can do is I think it's easier for other guys to get their numbers when playing with him. And it's in like a more, how do I phrase this? It's in like a more fluid way, whereas sometimes with Brunson, the offense can feel very kind of like segmented. And then the other thing is Quickly is obviously just a way better defensive player than Brunson, so you get value there too. And so like I do kind of agree with that in the sense of if you're just talking about what player would this team be fucked the most without, I don't think you can say Brunson if you think Quickly is like even just a starting caliber point guard. So I would not.
I mean, it's got to be Randle this year, right?
It's Randle.
The backup four is hard. So
right to me, it's like I think last year there was another that you could again if you wanted to argue, well, we have Obi, you'd play a different way, blah blah blah. At least that's more of an argument then. But like now
this year, there's no one, right? You can't have.
Yeah, there's none. You'd be so undersized. None of those guys has ever played even 50% of their minutes at the four, let alone, hey, you're the starting four now, Josh Hart. So, yeah, like that's definitely, to me, I think he's clearly the most important player. I would say Brunson after that. And then, sure, if you want to say Mitch, I think that's fair. That's definitely fair to put him in there. But I would say those two are definitely more important than him.
I think there's only 2 players on the team who, if you told me they didn't play during the Cleveland series, we would have lost it. Brunson and Mitchell Robinson. I think that's the one series we won, and we don't win that. I mean, do you agree with that, or do you think the Knicks beat the Cavs without Mitchell Robinson? I don't.
So I say this as somebody who thinks Mitch was a huge reason we won that series, maybe the biggest reason we won that series. I do think we could have won that series without him. If you told me we still had another, like if you just take him away from the series and he's gone, and there's like maybe not. But if you told me, okay, he's gone, but you'd have like, a decent center in his place.
Oh, so you're feeling a replacement level. So like,
yeah, like I think you could have won that series still because because I thought Hartenstein was really good in that series. Hartenstein was like I think I mean, this always happens where you kind of always forget the specifics of a series, but Hartenstein was really
good. He bodied those 2 guys. I mean, yeah, he bodied Allen too.
Yeah,
when he got the chance.
I mean, Hartenstein in games 3 and 4, like the minutes. I mean, not just him, but when those bench guys came in, we absolutely destroyed them in those minutes. Like that in a lot of ways, those minutes are what won us the series, and the starters kind of more or less played it even. But those minutes killed it for them, and a huge part of that was Hartenstein. So like, I think we could have won it. Would it have been a lot harder? Yeah, for sure. Because you're going from having 2 starting caliber centers, one who was absolutely, I mean, to be honest, both of them are dominating them. Totally having one, like, yeah, it's a big drop off. But I'm a pretty big believer in Hartenstein, which I can't believe I'm saying. Which is huge 180. Yeah, I mean, I think Hartenstein's really good. So I
Were
think we
you
could have won
that
that
down
series.
on him last year? I remember you wanted him to. You were. I don't think you ever were that out on him, right?
I was pretty out on him, man. I just was like, man, this guy is not boxing anybody out. He makes the dumbest decisions. He still makes decisions at least once or twice a game that I'm like, okay, all right, sure. Jokic to the East over here. But
Well, you
no,
you
he's
watch Josh Allen, so it must be the same feeling, right? So
it
once in a
is, but
while,
he
you got
also,
to live with some crazy decisions.
yeah, I mean, there's a little bit different talent difference between Josh Allen and Isaiah Hartenstein. But yeah, I mean, Mitch was awesome, but do I think he's more valuable than Jalen Brunson or Julius Randle? No, I don't. I think that's a little bit much. But like if I gave Quentin Grimes truth serum and was like, tell me who honestly is the most valuable Nick, I don't know if he's going to say Mitch. I don't even know the context of what he was asked. Like it sounded like a question where they asked him something about Mitch, and he just was like giving the good teammate
I mean,
answer of like,
do you think these guys pay attention to when they see Mitchell Robinson ranked 100th in the league? Do you think these guys are looking at that? And maybe that's kind of because it
I'm
does
sure
feel
they
like he's
are.
underrated.
Oh, I'm sure they are. Anybody that tells you they're not looking at that is lying. Also, Mitch, great answer. I'm him. I'm like, the funniest thing about that is like when I saw that ranking, I was like, man, that's so disrespectful. And Mitch is just like, yep, I'm him, bro. Number 100.
Well,
But yeah, I'm sure they're aware of it. Seems like they were asked about it. At least Mitch was asked about it, obviously. I don't know if Grimes was. These guys are all online, like they know exactly what's happening, what people are talking about. So I'm sure that they're aware of it. So yeah, I mean, maybe they said that. Maybe it was intentional to say that. But I also think it sounded like he got asked a question about Mitch, and he answered it in a very, very nice way. Which good on Quentin Grimes.
cool. I know you're, without disclosing too much or spoiling anything, I know you're working on some stuff on Hartenstein. Can you, so going into like you're talking about, you did kind of a 180. What do you kind of envision for him without maybe giving anything away too much about what you're writing about?
I mean, I don't think it's too much different from like what we've seen from him in this preseason. I like, the defensive rebounding has come a long way from whatever the hell that was to start last season. I think his box out rate got really, really high, especially in the back half of the year. He was really good about that.
He was close to Mitch. They were both
Yeah.
top 10, I believe. So
Yeah, which is nuts. I just want to see more of him facilitating from the top of the key when we're in the half court, because I think you want to encourage movement. That bench unit, especially, I think needs to be. They need to keep things moving and keep guys, active. And it sometimes can descend into like the Quickly show or the RJ show, and there are periods those guys can get away with it and help carry us offensively, but the team's offense has not been good doing that. So you need to find ways to juice it. And I think, yes, it's all well and good to be like, we're going to play fast, we're going to run the floor, and we want to get out in transition and blah, blah, blah. But like 90% of the game is not going to be played in transition. So you need to find ways to juice your offense in the half court. And I think Isaiah Hartenstein with that group is really he's such an easy way to lean into something else. And we already saw that, like he hit RJ on a beautiful pass on the cut. We saw in the first game he dined up Deuce a few times. Like he's a really good passer if you put movement around him, but you've got to put movement around him and you've got to trust him. And that was probably the hardest part about the start of last season, whereas like it's hard to trust him when he was playing the way he was. But as the season went on and he started playing better, I think you saw not just him be more comfortable doing more things. I think you saw more faith in the coaching staff for him to do more things. I think you saw more faith from his teammates to do things. So he's built up that credit now in the bank. And hopefully carries it forward, because to me, like, if you're talking about, like, the Knicks finished third in offensive rating last year. A lot of that was about, as we've talked about numerous times, really good shot selection and dominant offensive rebounding. Teams are going to be more prepared for them to be an offensive rebounding team this year. That doesn't mean that they're not going to be a dominant offensive rebounding team this year, but it might be a little bit harder for them. They might not be quite as dominant. And to offset that, on top of a variety of other reasons, you could be like, Randle will not be as efficient, and maybe Quickly and RJ and Grimes, like, they're still good, but they don't take the step that you're hoping for them to take. So there are reasons to believe that the aggregate could come down. So ways you need to offset that are to find different tactical approaches. And I think Hartenstein's ability to facilitate and just be another offensive hub is one that can really help if the Knicks lean into it and they're committed to it.
Yeah, makes sense. We talked a lot about a bunch of the Knicks. Anything we've left out or that you want to mention going into this season?
I mean, this is the problem with this team. We've been talking about this fucking 9-man roster for like, what is it?
Rotation.
9-man rotation for fucking 3+ months now. And I'm just ready to see them play real basketball. That's it. I'm just really ready for them to play new basketball or play real basketball. The 3-point shooting obviously definitely needs to be better than it has been. Their numbers against Minnesota look okay. They went 13 of 35 as a team, but take out Deuce, who went 4 of 4 in the fourth quarter, and now all of a sudden you're 9 of 31, right? Like, so you want to get the percentage
Deuce
up.
isn't a great shooter.
We'll find out this year, one way or the other. But you want to get the percentages up from 3 for sure. So, Quickly, RJ, I think those two guys need to have a good year from 3. Grimes still hasn't found the range yet. I'm not worried about that because it's like, that's his thing. Like, I just think the sample and his track record is big enough that you don't need to worry about him shooting well from 3. But I mean, that's the big.
You need to keep getting him attempts though. Like, we can't go through too many. He gets 1 or 2 attempts a game type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's on him though too. Like, there was one yesterday, like the first bucket they made in that Minnesota game. He got the ball wide open in the corner, and like, sure, he put it on the deck and he attacked the rim and he finished. But like, to me, I don't want to see him put the ball on the deck there. You got an open fucking corner 3, buddy. Like, that's as money as it gets. Take the shot. So he needs to really like get this into his head that when he's open from 3, there should be no hesitation. There should be no other thought in his head, right? It's obviously if somebody's running out at you, okay, fine. But if you're open from 3, take the shot. You don't need to put the ball on the deck. You don't need to do anything crazy. You just need to go elevate and let it rip. Like, that's what he needs to do. I'm not worried about it. I think he will find his range. He will be fine. And the Knicks will be well off for it. How about you? Is there anything in particular that you are looking for this upcoming season or that you're worried about?
I want to see what Randle can do if he does have to carry the team in the half court. I want to see. I think Quickly. I didn't watch as much of the second game. In the first game, Quickly looked even stronger than he did last year. I want to see that translate to maybe more. I mean, Quickly is just. I mean, we don't know how much time now, so we can save this for another pod. But I was thinking about this, and I was thinking that if Quickly went to Portland and he had the Anthony Simons role, do I think he'd be more well regarded offensively? And I said, yeah, because he probably would have the freedom to let it fly in a way that he hasn't. But would he be this level of defender? Like, I do have to give Tibbs some credit for that, right? We know Quickly was a great defender in college, has the work ethic, but to be this, one of the best off-ball guys in the league, I don't know if that would have happened. And I don't know if but I think that at some point he's going to be needed to empower to, like, at the end of the day, yeah, like, he's become a lot better attacking the rim. He's become a lot, like, you want him to be a good playmaker. End of the day, what's really going to make him an offense, like what really is exciting about him as an offensive player is just kind of the threes that no one can defend. When they go under and he's well behind 3-point line, you just let it fly. When you're worried about the floater and he can just stop on a dime, where he can cross back over and pull up. So a little more. I've been saying this for a while. A little more fuck it in Emmanuel Quick's game, balanced with still making the right decision. But I think that between him and Tibbs, they're two smart basketball guys. They can get there. I've really liked what I've seen from RJ Barrett a lot. I'd like to see the jump shots just go down a little bit more. But honestly, he's been at close to 60 true shooting despite not hitting any threes, because he's getting the line so much. And then the last thing I want to see, I want them to commit at some point to Randle being I know you wanted to see Grimes with the bench unit, which I agree with. I like Grimes as the 3, but on kind of a related note, Grimes as the 3 usually means that there is not going to be an RJ in there to babysit the bench, which means if it is a bench unit and there's no Brunson, then I want Randle to be that guy. So I think the one thing I really want Tibbs to commit to is staggering Randle, because it does a few things. One, I mean, I've said this all offseason. Brunson can score. Brunson is opponent invariant, right? Unless he is the focal point of the defense, and like a really good defense in the playoffs, like Cleveland, he's not going to be stopped. And he was the focal point of Cleveland. He was the focal point of a really good Miami defense, and he still was torching them. So he doesn't need minutes against the bench. Randle can benefit from that, though, right? Because there are teams with good offensive players that are going to slow him down. He is going to be playing off of Brunson. So now that you have this Randle skill set where he's great on ball, but on the starting lineup, that's probably not his ideal deployment. Put on that second unit and Randle, Quickly, Grimes, and DiVincenzo next to ideally Hartenstein, but even next to Mitch. I mean, him with those 3 shooters, those 3 guys. Either he gets the rebound, they're guys who run up the floor in transition and find spots. And then, so, I mean, imagine you got Randle coming downhill and you have to worry about Quickly or Grimes fanning out on the wings. And you have Hartenstein throwing outlets and kind of in the half court acting as a hub. That's a lineup if they go through this whole season without using that, I just don't know how you excuse that. It should, especially against bench units. There's some starting lineups that it's not going to do as well against, but that's something I really want to see.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something they can lean into, and I think the numbers with even we talked earlier about Quickly, Deuce, Grimes. I think if you look at their numbers and add Randle, even that group was really good last year. And just to quickly add on to your point about Quickly and Simons, somebody put out a list of like rank these players, and among them was Quickly. Yeah, and it was among them was like Quickly and Simons, one of the options. And I put Quickly above Simons, and I had a few people were like, "That's crazy that you put Simons or Quickly above Simons." And I'll just say it this way, very very quickly. I think when you look at players, when you look at players, especially when you're talking about offensively, if that player is not good enough to be a first or second option on a contender, then they need to provide utility in other ways. That can be as a playmaker. That can be as a plus defender, whatever it is. Simons doesn't do that. Simons is neither capable of being a number 1 or 2 option on a contender. He's not a particularly good distributor, and he's a terrible defensive player. And that player, to me, is much less valuable than Emmanuel Quickly, who, if you want to tell me he's not as good offensively as Simons, sure, I got no problem with that. I would say that doesn't matter that much when neither of those guys is capable of being a top 1 or 2 guy on a championship team. So at that point,
my point was just more he would probably be launching a lot, and he'd be regarded.
Yeah. No, I get your point. I'm just saying, like, to me, I don't even care about the context of their situations when people are trying to make the comparison, because I know that Quickly, like, inherently, the guy that can contribute on a title team or a contending team or whatever is more valuable than the guy who would have to recalibrate his game and add value in areas that he's been a negative value in so far in his career. So, that was a pretty easy, like, I don't know. If you think Simons is better than him, that's fine. I don't really care. Like, he might be better. If you need to have a better lead dog on a bad team, sure, Simons is your guy. If you want to have a guy that actually helps you win basketball games on a good team, Quickly is your guy. All right. Anyway, that's enough for today. Stacy, let the people know they can find you and plug anything you'd like to
plug. Stacy Patton 89. We've got a few new pods that I'll plug. Strictly NFL, we plugged a bunch, and I'll reiterate what Shwin said, check out takes from obvious bozos. Find out if your take is a bozo take or if you're safe. I've put myself out there on that Discord channel, and it should be a fun pod. So check that out as well. As well as the New York Liberty are in the WNBA Finals, just won a game to stay alive, 2-1 in elimination. So continue to check all our coverage out from the great Gigi Spear and Matt Miranda on the Strickland.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Definitely check out Strictly NFL, and definitely check out all the great work that Gigi and Matt are doing covering the Liberty on their hopeful title run here. But aside from that, I have nothing to plug personally. So again, definitely check out that stuff. I'll plug our merchandise. I'll plug our Discord. I will plug the Patreon. And I will plug BetOnline, our great sponsor. All right, that is our show for today. Hope everybody has a great week, and I will see you on Friday.